Well, welcome everybody to the June meetup of the Azure CBus user group. I'm excited, like Michael Collier, I'm very excited to be back at this meetup. Some good pictures in here. Columbus, I think it'd be great to kind of see more and more people come to the meetup, so spread the word. I'll have some slides coming up in a minute where there's a LinkedIn group, Discord, great way to kind of continue to build the community here. So you can snap this, a QR code, there's a Discord out there. I know the Azure Terraformer is on it all the time.
Yes, sir.
So it's a great way. He is pulling me back into Discord to get more involved in that. So I'm looking forward to that. So hope to see you on there as well. I'll pause here while the phones do their thing.
Let's hope that QR code still is valid. You know, sometimes
Someone let us know if it's not.
those Discord links, sometimes they expire.
This one works. All right, good. There's a couple more, so that'll be
good
to figure out as well. So the meetup is on the second Wednesday of every month. You go to the meetup app, find it on there. You can go ahead and register for those. It helps with getting the food ordered and venue, stuff like that. So make sure you're registering and then spread the word. You can spread the links on your social channels or wherever you want as well. So definitely find us on Meetup. And like I said, I'm happy to be back at the user group helping Mark and Drake out with this. And I think, if you're looking to get involved, it'd be a great, let Mark or Drake or myself know, and happy to have more people kind of help. Many hands makes light work. So we can definitely use the assistance, spreading the word and getting talks and organizing, all that stuff. So definitely reach out if you're interested there. And there is some sessions coming up, some slots coming up as well. So if you have something like Mark mentioned on data or anything else you want to talk about, there's some times, I think next one is in July. I'm going to do something in the August timeframe. So I'm kind of working on what that one is right now. But then after that, it's completely open. So if you want to give a talk, let Mark or Drake or I know, and we can get you scheduled in. I'd love to have some more variety in here. As you see, Mark's been very busy. So we'd like to not have him so busy.
I'm only up there twice. I mean,
yeah, I think you did. Well, the Global Azure you were.
Oh yeah, I did that one too. Yeah,
Global Azure you're involved in too. All right, so that's a lot of work there. Yeah. So I'd love to let Mark be attendee more. There's some great ideas he's got up in here as well. All right, so anything you're interested in Azure, like you said, it's a pretty large platform, lots of areas to explore. So definitely jump in and something you're interested in. If it's anything like certifications in learning, right? Or whatever. Like there's be all sorts of cool stuff to work on. Policy and governance. Azure policy could be a cool one. Neat stuff you can do with that.
Yeah.
And then LinkedIn, another QR code for you. There's a LinkedIn group as well. Join that. You can kind of chat around there, share your information on that, what's going on in the Azure community. Another great way to kind of build this network of Azure kind of colleagues here in the Central Ohio area. Some other cool user groups, the .NET user group. They're pretty active as well. I think they've been meeting over at Central Insurance. There's Code and Coffee. Mark also helps run the HashiCorp user group in Columbus, so he's pretty busy. I don't think he sleeps, some other stuff going on. So definitely check out some of the other cool user groups in Columbus. Great way to, like Kat mentioned, just stay up to date on what's going on and get excited about new technology. There's all sorts of cool stuff happening. And then hiring. Is anybody hiring? Or one looking and hiring? Centric, are we probably? Somewhere along the line. I'm sure Centric's got some positions. Opportunistically, yeah, I need to pay attention to that email that comes out more often. Yeah, so if you're interested, let us know. Some cool opportunities coming up. And with that, Mark posted this talk around solving the JFK mystery with RAG and Azure OpenAI. I thought this was a cool idea for a talk, so glad he kind of jumped on working on this. I think you were working at StirTrack. Were you working on it, sitting next to me at StirTrack? You had something up there that looked...
I was probably working on my deck for StirTrack.
Real-time presentations. So this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to this. This is an area that we're looking into as well. I think the technologies here are super interesting, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Mark's got to share tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark to wow us with some RAG and OpenAI and tell us who killed JFK.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's my goal. Yeah, thanks. And definitely, if you want to, share what you're working on, I'm sure you're doing cool stuff. Don't feel like, it has to be level 400 or anything like that, right? Like this is a very diverse group of people. So I think even if you talk to a beginner or an intermediate or whatever you want to do, I think those talks are really good, and it actually might broaden the group, right? If we have more beginner focused talks. So definitely don't feel like you have to come up here and just do level 400 stuff. Like today, this is totally fun. Let me try and make this bigger, okay? So 2025, huh? What the heck, man? What a crazy year. What a crazy timeline we live in, right? So this talk was the genesis of that big document drop that came out, I think in February. And I was like, you know, it made the news for a few days, and then like it kind of sputtered out, and I was like, so I was like, I should go check this out. So I went to the archives website, and I was like, oh my God, like it's, you know, in classic government fashion, it's just an HTML page with a huge page list of 2,000 PDF files that you could download, right? It's like, who the heck is gonna like, you know, go through all this stuff? So I'm like, wouldn't it be great if there's a technology where you could just like type and chat with it, like ChatGPT? Oh, there is. So I got my like Google or my Bing, you know, browser out, and I started like searching up, and I found some source code that Microsoft actually publishes out there to set up a solution to do just this. And I had no idea. Again, this is like not an advanced topic. I'm not trying to dazzle you with my mastery of AI. Okay, like I have no idea what RAG was. I probably couldn't even I probably couldn't even deacronize it right now for you. What is it? Retrieval Augmented Generation? Is that what it? Yeah. Anyways, fancy talk for you have AI chat, and it goes and has some other data source that it feeds from in order to like have an intellectual conversation, somewhat intellectual conversation with you, as we'll find more about later. So that's pretty cool. So when I first started playing around with this, I actually pulled out my condo association like the policies, because I'm so sick and tired of those bastards, right? I love you people. If you're watching, you know, please, like, checks in the mail, okay? But I'm like, how am I, like, I would really love to be able to speak with authority at the next condo association meeting so I can just tell them off, right? So I loaded one PDF, you know, which is like 30 pages or whatever that like nobody maintains. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, what is the pet policy? You can have 2 pets and you have to and like, so it's like, oh, this works. So I'm like, when the JFK docs drop, I was like, yes, let's do this. Because I would like to be like, load in all those documents and be like, okay, AI, level with me right now. Who killed JFK? And then it'd be like, he did, or she did, you know. We will find out what happened, okay? That is coming. The truth will come out today, right here in Columbus, Ohio. So how does this thing, before we get to that, how does this thing work? And so basically, the way this solution works is you've got a user experience, which is that chat interface. And that runs in a browser, I guess, like, you know, the app you exit, got a mobile app. It doesn't have to be a mobile app, but the source code that I use actually is like, what is that, a reactive, you know, web experience so that it does work mobile as well. But then there's a back end. That back end talks to Azure OpenAI and Azure OpenAI Search, right? And so I didn't even know AI Search existed. I'd been using Azure OpenAI, which basically lets you load models and lets you make REST API calls to go talk to, you know, an LLM engine, right? And so it's basically like if you were to take the ChatGPT interface, put it behind a REST endpoint, and now your C# code or your Python code or whatever can talk to it. That's Azure OpenAI. But it runs in your Azure subscription. So if you already have a relationship with Microsoft, you can just pay through that like agreement with Microsoft. You don't have to go over to OpenAI, sign up over there, and like have a whole different procurement process. So it's kind of nice. There's probably some differences in terms of like the data protection with OpenAI as well. But I would imagine with the commercial licenses that you get with OpenAI, they probably have data privacy protection as well. I don't know, not the expert, but one of the value-added features of the Azure OpenAI is that like once your data is in OpenAI, like that's not going to go and be used for research and stuff like that. So AI search, that's the new thing. And that thing basically, as I understand it, is an indexer, right? And I don't even, so there's an Azure search service as well, which I think is just like indexing and stuff like that. But this adds like an AI element to it where it vectorizes the data that you put in to make it easier to be queryable through an OpenAI interface. And then you need data sources. And that's where my JFK docs or my condo association guidelines came into play, right? So you just need to load those in. So that's kind of what the architecture looked like. And I'll show you what got deployed and how I deployed it in a little bit later, naturally. No Terraform was involved though, okay? I know, crazy, right? But that's gonna change someday. Yeah, basically the data sources get uploaded and stored on Azure Blob Storage. So the oldie but a goodie. And then they're basically staged there, but then they get indexed and vectorized, and that gets stored in the Azure AI Search. And then using a combination of Azure OpenAI and Azure AI Search, that web app, that application interface creates that chat experience that you can actually talk with your documents, right? And I'll show what that experience is like with the JFK files. So that's kind of the overview of the architecture. Any questions about that? I've been kind of buzzing through that. But yeah, the Azure AI Search was the big new service for me. All this source code is available on this Git repo, this GitHub repo that I found when I was binging. So you can go download this yourself. And in a matter of minutes, assuming you have an Azure subscription already set up, you clone the repo, you run a couple of commands, and it'll provision this whole thing out there. I do have some points about some guidance or some disclaimers about cost coming up later, so just bear with me there. But it's really cool. Like it will shoot this stuff up into the cloud for you, and you can get going. Now it does come with some documents in classic Microsoft fashion, Contoso, billing inventory, or Contoso condo association guidelines. I don't know what they have, but they have a few examples that are already in there. And when I set up my JFK docs, I made sure to clear that out, and I'll explain how I did that later. So that code base is a great place. Is that even visible? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty small. So getting started with this code base, I don't know if, basically all you have to do, I don't know if wow, that works. Oh, but you can't see that. It works on my screen. This code base uses Azure Developer CLI. Does anybody know what Azure Developer CLI is? Mike does. So does anybody know what the Azure CLI is? Okay, many more nods. So the Azure CLI, as of course we know, talks to the Azure control plane. You can do deployments and stuff like that. You can log in, you can create a resource group, create a storage account. The Azure Developer CLI is basically like a wrapper for other command line tools. So it's supposed to be developer focused. Basically, it tries to make all of the sausage making, so to speak, go away. So if you want to deploy your applications to Azure, it'll go talk to Bicep, it'll go talk to Azure, it'll go talk to Python Flask and deploy your code, right? So it's an abstraction. And so you'll see, in the ecosystem, my apologies, in the ecosystem, you'll see a lot of the samples that Microsoft publishes uses the Azure Developer CLI to deploy the sample so you can get up and running fast and kind of kick the tires. Now, I'm going to hold my judgment about this approach, but one of the things, I guess I'm not going to hold it. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't really like this approach from a production standpoint, right? It's great for demos, it's great for samples, but from a production standpoint, it's not super great. So a lot of these samples that you'll see are exceedingly complex, including this one. And then it's a matter of okay, that's great. I got this sample working. I talked to my JFK documents, but now what? How do I productionalize this if I work at, wherever, right? And so trying to take this sample that's using Azure Developer CLI and convert it to something production ready, that's a little bit more of an uplift. But So that's my disclaimer and warning there. But you can see here there's like 3 steps that you have to do, basically. And then what you get with this is this, basically you get a web app that's running in an Azure container instance that's talking to Azure OpenAI and Azure AI Search behind the scenes. And it's a really great experience. The sample also has all sorts of extension points, if you care to look, to enable authentication with Entra ID. So in a fair bit of order, like you could take this code base and get a demo with your corporate documents and your corporate authentication up and running to show people, but just don't promise like how to get into production that fast, okay? That's all I'm trying to say. But you can get a demo of this RAG tool working really fast. And so this is what Azure DevOps, the Azure Developer CLI is doing behind the scenes, if you care to diagnose it, right? And if you care to go productionalize this. There's a bicep template that provisions the ACI, the ACR, the Azure Container Registry, the Azure AI Search, the Azure Storage, all of those things. It even has log analytics. It has everything, right? That's in this solution, right? All that's in Bicep. Azure Developer CLI pushes, shoots that stuff up into the cloud. Then there's a whole bunch of Python scripts. And what do these Python scripts do? Well, they load a data folder that's in this Git code base that has those Contoso like sample docs that I replaced with JFK, and it splits the files into chunks. This is a common technique when you're doing RAG, is because I forget the exact term. Maybe somebody will help me out, but when the chunks of the files have to be processed by a large language model in order to be vectorized. And sometimes the buffer, maybe is what it's called, the buffer size of the large language model is only so big. So if you have like some of these JFK files, like one file is like a gigabyte or something like that, So you can't just load 1 gigabyte into like the large language model buffer. You have to split it up into little chunks, and then each chunk is processed kind of individually. And then those chunks are uploaded, indexed, and vectorized on the Azure AI Search, and it's actually using Document Intelligence, another service called Azure Document Intelligence, which is an interesting wrinkle as well, and a new for me service. So that's what's happening behind the scenes. Then, like once all those documents are up there and processed in Azure AI Search, then it's just a matter like good old-fashioned meat and potatoes application development, right? We have an app that's got a web interface with a chat bot. We create a Docker image, we push it to the ACR, and then we deploy that to an ACI, and that's it. So that's kind of the process that you go through. Now, when you go and do this sample without loading the JFK files, this whole process, end to end, takes maybe 15 minutes, max. When I did my JFK files, the step number 2 took me, I think, 3 days. It took 3 days. And I've got 5 gigabit up and down, like through fiber, okay? So it's not the upload speed that's like slowing me down. It's the chunking of the files and indexing and vectorizing those files, right? And so every chunk, that it splits up, I have to use tokens to process. And so basically you just get this huge text scroll of the Python, which is splitting the file, getting a chunk, shooting it up there, processing it with LLM. It took X number of tokens to process it, moving along to the next chunk, right? And you do that for every single file that you include in there, right? So with the JFK files, that was like 2,000 files or so. So it's more about like the processing. So in a production system, this would probably be the area that you'd want to explode to be a lot more parallel and running on like more servers out in the cloud rather than on my laptop, over the weekend, basically. But it's a mountain of Python code that you'd have to go through and kind of untangle. So I apologize. This is probably not very easy to look through. I'll open VS Code later and we can look at this stuff. But this is kind of the structure of the code base. There's there's the scripts. Where the Python's stored. This is that data directory, and you can see it right here. So there's Northwind. I didn't mention that one. And Contoso, right? So kind of the usual suspects in terms of Microsoft samples. But what I did was I just downloaded all the JFK files, and I'll go into how I did that in a little bit. Nothing too magical. And I loaded them into this file. I just tweaked the Python code to ignore all the Contoso and Northwind and load only the JFK files, and we're in business, right? Everything else works the same. So it's a pretty easy thing to get going. So if you've got a whole bunch of treasure trove of files, you could get a demo up and running pretty fast. So where did I get these JFK files? Well, as I mentioned earlier, they're in the National Archives. You can go to this website. You can go, browse and peruse and view them. There are a bunch of PDF files out there. And so how do I get these files? Well, one thing that I try and do is I try and admit when I don't know something. And I admit that I'm really terrible at writing bash scripts, okay? So one of the most common conversations I have with ChatGPT and vibe coding is, hey, ChatGPT, I want to do this. How do I write a bash script for this, right? So I vibe coded some bash scripts to help me go download all these files from this HTML page, because of course the government's not just going to make it easy and publish it on data.gov. It's going to be trapped in like a table HTML tag with a bunch of TR and TD elements that you got to go parse. So rather than do that, I vibe coded some bash scripts. And so I gave a talk at Azure Global about vibe coding. So I'll lay with you my definition of vibe coding. You can take it for what it's worth, but vibe coding is AI coding beyond the bounds of your competency, okay? So bash, so here's my competency boundary. Bash is way over here, okay? So when I'm doing AI-based development with bash, I'm totally vibe coding, right? When I'm writing C#, we're good. Yeah, I'm not vibe coding. I know what the crap I'm doing with C#, unless it's a UI. I don't do UIs anymore. I'm sure, Mike, do you feel me? I think UIs have, but you're getting back into it with what are you doing, React now or something? Next, okay, yeah. So yeah, I might have to get back into React too, but different story. So I vibe coded some bash scripts, and this is what my bash scripts do. So first of all, I vibe code this bash. I'm like, okay, I got to download this HTML. It comes in pages. The pages are on this. They start on this page. Help me download all the pages of HTML. And we write a script. We download all the HTML. Then I'm like, okay, great. I have all these HTML pages. They have table blocks in them somewhere. And luckily, there's a pattern where the URLs are for the PDFs are in plain text in the TD blocks. So I vibe code a little bash script that just basically goes through all the HTML pages, extracts if it finds a PDF URL, it dumps it into a flat file that's carriage return delimited. I don't even know what you would call that, just like a file with raw, unedited URLs on each line. Probably the simplest CSV file that you could imagine, a CSV file with no commas. So then it's a matter of downloading the files. So I vibe code. So now I have a text file that has all the URLs that I want to download. I vibe code a little bash script that just downloads the crap out of all those files and dumps them in my JFK directory. That's it. Now all I have to do, update the configuration, which I search and replace in the Python code, which I don't understand, okay, because I don't, Python's way over there too. And then I run that magical command azd up, which makes, hand waving, happen. And azd up, as we discussed previously, runs the bicep that provisions the environment, runs all that magical Python that I've just reconfigured to use my JFK directory, and does all that stuff that takes 3 days, right? And I'm in business. And so all of these bash script vibe code, so I'm using AI to vibe code a bash based like solution that'll help me like basically ingest data, right? In a very bespoke way. Like this is not a production ready way, right? You would probably, if you wanted to like, build in some synchronization mechanism with the National Archives to do this, like this is not the way you would do it. But, and it probably wouldn't be in bash, but it worked for my demo. So I'm vibe coding this, and so here's like that HTML. You can see it's pretty basic. Like the PDFs are in there, and there's my script that like I extract the URLs from the HTML, and then I download the files programmatically. Again, this is all AI, like vibe coded bash, and then you run AZD up, and AZD you run AZD init. You run AZD auth login, which basically prompts an Azure interactive login. I log it, which is going to get me connected to my Azure subscription. And then I do AZD up and all that magic happens. And this is what you see when all that processing is happening. And so this is that Python script, which, it's like splitting PDF 104.10120-10274.pdf. And then, it splits it into little chunks. And then it says token count, like that first chunk that completed, it took 2,057 tokens, right? We'll get into costs later, but like, I'm pretty sure like 2,000 tokens sounds like a lot. But it is not a lot. It does not cost a lot of money. I think that the tokens on Chat, like somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I'm pretty sure the order of magnitude on tokens is in the millions. Is that right? Yeah. So this is not where the bill came in for me, but we'll get into that later. So 3 days later, after like uploading, indexing, vectorizing all of these 2,000 files, and spending X dollars, which I'll share later. Don't tell my wife, okay? Who killed JFK? So I log in and I have this in it, and you probably can't see that, I'm sorry, but this is the first thing that I typed in when I talked to my like little website. It's a website hosted on an Azure container instance, so it's got one of those generic GUIDs. Right? And I just said, who killed JFK? And it gave me this BS answer. It said, the assassination of JFK is subject to various theories and blah, 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 blah. This got me thinking, like I'm using Azure OpenAI and it's using an LLM GPT-3.5 Turbo, okay? And so I'm wondering, in terms of like the whole AI safety thing, I'm wondering if somebody that made that model, like put some guardrails on it so I couldn't ask controversial things. So this is one thing from my talk, or from this experiment that I did, where I was like, I'm gonna revisit this sometime in the future, right? And I'm gonna try like a different AI model when I do the AI like ingestion thing and spend X dollars, which we'll get into later, to see if the outcome is different. But I got a lot of politicians' answers. Like, let's be real. Like this sounds like a politician's answer to me. So I wasn't super happy about that. But like with any LLM, the nice thing is you can kind of peel that onion, right? You can start asking probing questions and see how far you get. And so I started kicking the tires on it, and then like the next question was like, well, what are those theories? How are those theories referenced in these documents that like we have here? And even in these responses, like you can't quite see that, but like there's citations right here, right? And it tells you the exact PDF file that it's referencing. So I know like the RAG tool is working. It's referencing these PDFs and it gives me citations. So that's pretty cool, right? However, the citations, for a broad question like this, you would think that there would be like a whole bunch of citations, right? So that's an interesting thing as well. So, but this also jives with like my experience with working with LLM is like if you give it an open canvas, like the wider you set that aperture, like the worse the outcome is going to be. So you really have to focus in and ask very, very specific questions if you want to get anything really good out of this. And so as I moved on, like I started, so garbage in, garbage out is another example that I found is some of these documents are really rough, right? The JFK files contain documents that are often handwritten, right? Which is not great. So, that stuff. And then some of them are like maybe scans of newspapers and stuff like that, where like you can visibly see that it's been ripped out of the newspaper and like scanned on like one of those old $90 scanners or something, from the 90s. So I think the quality of the documents that you load in here, if they're fully digitized PDFs, you're probably going to get a lot better experience. Like even my condo association like guidelines, which was a much smaller sample, which I think also played into it, I was able to get a very good experience. So I think when the quality of the documents goes down, right? Like it has a harder time processing that stuff. And then also the size of the documents also impacts the accuracy of the results that you get. You have to ask very specific questions when you're trying to probe into a huge thing of trove of documents. With my condo association, one doc. So like it's like it could load that whole thing in memory, and there was no problem. But when you're going across 2,000 documents, it seemed like it struggled. Now that could be the configuration that I had with out of the box, So that's another thing that I put in the parking lot where it's like, if I were to go back and do this again, not only would I try like a different model to see if I could get non-politicians' answers, but I would probably also see what levers and switches I could use to kind of like maybe optimize like the search ability of these documents. Because it did seem like having such a large number of documents impacted the accuracy. So that might be in the solutions that you guys approach. You might have to think about a good sharding strategy to kind of break this stuff up into chunks so that you don't have one giant thing with millions or thousands of documents. Like you might want to have smaller little petri dishes, so to speak, of documents to give you better answers. So let's talk about cost. So yes, exactly. My wife has not seen my Azure bill for February or March. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, yeah. My blog. I don't know. I just had a lot of traffic that month. $700. Okay. And that you can see that happened over the span of 1, 2, 3 days. And guess what was happening during those 3 days? That was all the data ingestion, right? Now, I left it running, and I actually left it running for a much longer time than this. But this is just the forecast, so ignore that, right? Luckily, the forecast didn't ever happen because the actual run cost after ingestion goes way, way down. And that's even like after me using this. I even was so bold as to publish a link to the website on LinkedIn. And I saw traffic, Now it didn't go viral or anything like that, which would have definitely made my bill go up. But I was kind of like, oh, should I do this? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could cover that bill. If this actually if like Elon posted it on X or something, I'd be in up shit creek. What's up?
Did all the data processing happen in Azure, or did it chunk everything, create the embeddings locally and upload them?
So the chunking happened locally, but the indexing and the vectorization happened up in Azure using Document Intelligence. And that is actually where these green bars came from. So it's the Document Intelligence service where I spent all my money. And I think I have a slide coming up here. Yeah, and I had to drill into this a little bit further. So if you look at here, this is the cost analyzer, and this is one of the views that I really like when I'm like analyzing the cost of whatever workload. I pick a resource group, and then I do a group by service, right? I forget if it's like the service group or something, but like you get things like container registry, storage, cognitive services, container apps, Azure Cognitive Search, Azure Applied AI Search, right? And so all this stuff shows up, and guess what? It's like Azure Applied AI Search, which when I dug a little deeper, this is my document intelligence resource, right? So boom, there you go. 673 of the dollars, I don't even know when I captured this, it might still be on the downturn after that, came from one resource, and that's the Document Intelligence Service, which shocked me at first because I kind of expected most of the costs would come from Azure OpenAI, as like somebody new to these two services. I figured the tokens would be coming from here, and that's where most of my costs would come from. But the way this played out, this is data ingestion, indexing, vectorization. This, I believe, is some of the large language model processing, but I think this is what you start interacting with in that chat interface, right? And then this is like tying into this. And so if I would have continued to leave that website, and I left that website up just running on a single little Azure container instance just to see how much, and I would monitor the traffic. It didn't get that much traffic, but people other than me were going out to that Azure container instance and chatting with it for a little bit, and then they'd get bored with it and move on. I think that this cost went away on the run costs, and then this and the ACI and the ACR are pretty much like that long-term cost. So that was kind of an interesting lesson, is like the data, and this is where like you really probably want to think through your sharding strategy, because you don't want to have to go re-ingest all that data again. You know what I mean? That's because that's going to be where a big chunk of your cost comes from. So that was a good learning. But in terms of the bill of materials, right? Like this solution has everything: storage account, observability, container registry, managed ID to, provide access to all the things. Azure Search Service, OpenAI, container app, and then this document intelligence jerk face. And then a container app environment, and that's pretty much it, right? App insights and stuff to monitor what's going on. So it's an end-to-end solution. So I guess the final thoughts that I had, clean docs definitely help. I think what hurt my experience chatting with this solution was there were so many, a lot of the stuff was in these really I don't even know what you call it, but rasterized, black and white grayscale docs, right? Where a really faint pen stroke is capturing it. I could not find handwritten stuff when I would type. However, some of the garbly newspaper stuff, I pulled up one of the PDFs and I picked out a really, really unique name. And it was some Polish name, like Pazinski or something like that. And I was like, tell me about Pazinski, right? In the back where K, you can appreciate this, K. Yes, you can appreciate this. So it might have been a Russian name. But I queried that specific name, and it was oh yeah, Pazinski. He and his two sisters and cousin's half-brother, and it told me all sorts of stuff about Pazinski when I asked about him, right? So, and I looked at the PDF that Pazinski was referenced in, and it was in some garbled up newspaper, right? So that I think there is some level at which it can do a pretty good job with document intelligence to pull out some stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect and like squeaky clean, but like there is diminishing return on like really, really bad stuff. You know, like if a mouse was chewing on that paper, like you might have a hard time. But the being able to ask it broad stroke questions and give you a book report wasn't a great experience, right? You had to really engage with the chat interface and just probe, and get very, very detailed. Almost like spear phishing, right? It's like if you got that magic word, Pazinski, right, then it's like, boom, it can tell you all about it. But unless you know those magic words, it's kind of like wandering around in a dark room. In terms of, so I think perhaps a better AI model like GPT-35 Turbo might have also improved the results as well. I think if you're going to do a solution like this, you definitely need a sustainable ingestion approach. Like loading them into a local file system and batching it with bash scripts, is good for the demo that you need to get done by Friday, which I have a demo that I have to get done by Friday, which I'm going to work on after this. But it's not. It's like I envision a much more parallel, like event-based, like processing mechanism, connected up to document systems that you use within your enterprise, like SharePoint or something like that, where you can load these documents as they get modified, as they get added by your end users. So that's definitely something that could be improved if you were to take this solution and go to market with it. My last piece of guidance is whatever you're trying to do, be in it for the long haul, okay? I did not realize the level of commitment that I was getting into with that $700 bill, which actually was kind of like table stakes. Who plays poker in here? You know what table stakes is, right? It's like, you got so much money in the pot, you might as well just like let it run out, right? So after $700, I was like, okay, we're just gonna let this thing cook for a little bit and see what happens. It couldn't get much worse, right? But yeah, that's true. I mean, I watched it like a hawk, let me tell you. But as soon as it dropped down and leveled out, I'm like, okay, like I'm not gonna delete this thing because to bring it back is like $700, right? So table stakes, big time. So like definitely, experiment with small like document repositories first, and then like gradually increment, and definitely think about your sharding strategy, because once you ingest all that stuff, you probably don't want to do it again. So like me. That's it. That was my talk. So any questions? Yeah.
So on an ongoing basis, can we just add documents to this by indexing new documents, or get to rebuild the whole thing?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. You can add new documents. Yeah. And that's where I think an improved version of this solution, like to productionalize, and actually, spoiler alert, and shameless self-promotion, I'll be speaking in San Francisco at HashiConf in September, and that's going to be what my talk is about. I'm going to take this solution, I'm going to rewrite it in Terraform, and I'm going to improve and scale that automation like of data ingestion for documents, so that it's not this hacktastic like Mark vibe coding bash scripts to ingest docs. I want it to be like a sustainable workload that like you can spin it up and you can start ingesting documents very easily. So if you can watch that online, or you can come visit me in San Francisco in September 24th to the 26th. So what's up?
How large was the stream that you ingested?
In terms of raw PDFs, I think it was like 7 gigabytes. Yeah. So again, remember, like I've got a 5 gigabyte pipe at my house. So I think I got 1 gig up, okay? 1 gig up. which I have a pretty robust home network. So like, I'm not losing it to, what like efficiency or whatever. The upload speed was not what slowed me down. It was definitely the like high latency actions of I think it ran it pretty sequentially. Like it's not running it in parallel, it's just that Python script that's just like the little engine that went through all 2,000 files.
The documents were a mix of regular PDFs and images, newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
Would you say there was a correlation between how many gigabytes that repository was and how much it ended up costing using document intelligence? Or do you think like a repository that was less image-based and more just text-based PDFs would have been cheaper, quicker to copy?
That's a really good question. And it kind of goes into the nuance of the pricing of document intelligence service, which from the research that I've done, document intelligence charges you per page. Now, whatever that means, I don't know. I assume like if I have an 87 page PDF, then that's 87 pages, then it's like whatever per page, right? But PDFs are very weird creatures, right? Like some PDFs, like one PDF that just has like a block of text, it might save, and it might be like 50K. And this like visibly the exact same content might save and be 50 megabytes. And it's all about like what that PDF format is doing. Is it saving it as text, or is it rasterizing, a graphic and saving the text as a graphic? But I don't know if document intelligence like charges you more based on like raster-based images or just text-based documents. You would think that they would charge you based on like you would get charged more for a page that's full of images because it's harder to process. But
Model that uses
yeah,
different models to pull out different types of data. But the OCR part would be the interesting thing. If you could do different models against those images, right? Like if it's a text embedded, easy to figure out. This is scan images.
Yeah. And that could be what it was doing with GPT-4 or 3.5 Turbo, because I think there is some imaging processing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't even load the images.
I think my understanding of document intelligence, it's ripping through trying to get the text out, right? And
Yeah.
that's going to give you those chunks, but then create the embeddings. But then when you make your query, against that vector database, then it's like, hey, how do I match that stuff up in that vector database? So doc intelligence just tries to get the text and then the right chunks to send into your vector database that then you can then do the query off of with Azure AI Search.
Yeah.
Like find, okay, where is it?
Yeah.
And years, I looked at like that, who killed JFK, give you that one page. I'm like, why didn't you pick that one page?
Yeah.
I was like, pull it up. I'm like, well, there's a section in that document that says like, there's like a conspiracy, and here's a couple of things. I'm like, so why did you pick that one page? So like picking out, like you mentioned, like your whole, like, I got this big corpus of data. Why did you pick that one? I bet if you asked it several different times, would it give you that same page?
Yeah. I don't know.
To see like how often it changes answer, or at least the citing.
The citations, yeah. I played around with it a little bit, but the demo on GitHub does have like those samples, Contoso, Northwind, whatever. There is an example. It's actually like a really old Oracle like design spec for what is that like what did they used to call that for Oracle like high availability solution? It's like it's like Bridge, what?
Real application cluster?
Yeah. Is it like Golden Gate? Oh, is it called Golden Gate? I'm digging deep here. Anyways, it's like this really old 90s era like computer architecture diagram. And I'm pretty sure it's got raster images in there. That kind of makes me think that maybe they are processing more than just text, but I mean, and like maybe it's not just maybe they can't use OCR, but maybe there's text in and raster. So that would be an interesting area to explore, to see like how well Document Intelligence processes raster images. But is that right?
Yeah. Real-time data replication high availability.
Yeah, I totally pulled that out of nowhere.
Ask about the model. So you did the expensive ingestion and you're tied to the model. If you go to pick another model, then is it going to be all that again, or is that hard part? I think, like you were saying, the tokens are already kind of there. Would it be going to another model?
That's a good question. So
they own whether it's available or not.
Yeah.
It's kind of out of your hands how long it's going to last.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, so it's unclear to me, or it's ambiguous to me. The tokens, right? The tokens that I see scrolling past me on that Python window, like as it's like indexing and vectorizing the chunks of the documents, like I assume it's using ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, because that was what the default model is. Like, are those tokens the tokens that are actually showing up on my Document Intelligence thing, or is that unrelated? Because like I could see, it kind of makes me like the pricing model for the Document Intelligence being page-based kind of makes me think it's unrelated, right? Because where was that screen? Because you do see these tokens here. So this is OpenAI, which is where my 3.5 Turbo is in, right? And so this is the ingestion period. So we see a similar spike during the ingestion period. This makes me think that those tokens are coming from OpenAI service. And this spike, the really expensive spike from Document Intelligence, is the page-based stuff, right? So I feel like if I were to rerun this with a more expensive model like GPT-4, or 4.0, or 0.1 or whatever, right? Then this would probably stay the same. This would probably go up, right? And so I'd see a spike, but maybe I would get better results. But this also begs the question, so let's say I do the dirty and I load all this 2,000 documents with GPT 3.5 Turbo and I don't like the results. And I pay this and I pay this. Now the next step is, can I rerun those docs that are already ingested and not pay the tax man again, and just pay for this to like re-vectorize them? That's a good question. Because that would be nice, because I definitely don't want to do that again,
Yeah, and like you said, long haul, you want to hold the data for long. It's your data.
Yeah. So
Assuming this how the sample work. That gets your vectors in the data store.
yeah.
Then you can switch between whatever model you want to. So use these tokens. Does one model perform better than another model?
Yeah.
How can it, like a reasoning model versus a GPT-3.5 or something that possible which gives you the best performance?
Yeah. And then can you, like, how could I oscillate between different models, or could I? Could I do a side-by-side, like Pepsi versus Coke test, but with the same document? Like, what is the experience with GPT? I kind of feel like you might have to spin up two of these side-by-side and pay that twice. I kind of think that might be what you'd have to do, but.
There's some open slots on the future talks.
There is a donation can as you're exiting the building. Chris, you're more than welcome to throw some quarters in the donation can.
So the cost, the number tells us why companies like NVIDIA, their stock is going up. So a sort of question is basically a ask. I think all the document which you scanned, right, they don't have any conclusion on the question that you asked. You asked who killed it, but the document never says who killed it.
Right.
Right. A quick test, write one page just using ChatGPT, that hey, someone killed it with a story, and just do a test. Does the model still answers that someone named ABC killed John Kennedy,
Hmm.
or still it's not answering. If
Hmm.
it is not answering, that means all these companies who are designing all these LLMs, they are following some ethics,
Yeah.
and it's across the globe for different countries.
Yeah.
They don't want to touch any topic which has side effects. And the reason I'm bringing up, because when Gemini got launched, they have some answers which raise similar concern in my country, in India. So I'm not sure how many people are using Grok.
I use Grok. Yeah.
Okay, so a good thing is Grok is that it has less ethics. So
That okay. Let's write that down on so the good thing about Grok.
in a same language of a trawler, and it will answer you with facts.
Yeah.
It will have that trawling sentiments
Yeah.
and the symbols.
Yeah.
In Foundry and AI Foundry, which we've been playing with that for the last 3 weeks, you can tweak the safety rules, and you can ground and ground and refine, and have it answered. So you can tweak the rules under which it operates, and give it a persona as part of that discussion. You probably can when you search here too, but it's a function of the UI and you defining a persona that's kind of sent with every payload that you're sending back. But you can tweak the safety, so that means you can bring it down to where it'll say really bad things. And then then there are other settings too. A lot of, and you can do it on the fly as well. It's not set in stone.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it all means yet.
Yeah. We laughed at the way you phrased the whole like Grok has no ethics, but like I totally get where you're coming from, because there is some sort of like suspicion in me when I'm using an LLM. It's like, and to like, whether you love him or hate him, like Elon's goal with Grok is to create a truth-seeking like AI that optimizes for truth-seeking rather than like an agenda-driven thing. And like whatever you call it, safety or AI ethics, right? There is an agenda, right? Sometimes that agenda is good. It's like, I don't want you to call me bad names. That's nice, you know? Could a truth-seeking AI LLM call you bad names? Maybe. If I'm an asshole, I guess. You know, it's like, I'm an asshole. So
just an answer when you said that kind of same vector database can be used across multiple LLMs. If you use open source one, I think it gives us flexibility. So there are open source vector databases. If you use them, you can integrate it with LLM, with Gemini, Llama, whatever you want.
Yeah. So that's definitely an interesting, like maybe next step for this solution. I encourage you to go to GitHub, check this out. I feel like that is like a capability. It may require some bit twiddling, like to try and figure out how to get that can be configured. But like, I think that's a capability of like the services that are provisioned, but maybe the code is set up in such a way that like it's, it's like going down one path. But
so I think I have listed this GitHub solution which you brought it long back when I was working at a solution for a company one year before. And then I just left all the stuff. So basically it was like it was a law firm which has thousands of PDFs, and they want to reduce the number of law graduates to have them pile up the cases. So they figure out that to process one case, one person needs at least a month to sit down and study and come up with something. They said, we already have an archive of 1,000+ cases. Use LLM and find out what are the closest 10 cases which matches with this case which just came to our law agent. And then based on they have a way to increase the citation. So you just got one, they will bring more, like 5, 10. And then they use it and it helped them to quickly draft the case description and assessment at least 50 to 70% based on how their success rate is. So, hey, we have 10 similar cases out of this 10. These are the 3 which we won, and it was very close. And so, so I was working on more kind of architecture side, so I'm more aware of all this. I didn't have like hard coding and coded because it was a mix and match kind of a people who were more expert from all this side. So
Cool. Yeah, that's and that was running on Azure.
yes.
There we go. We got a case study right there, guys. So there you go. What's up?
I have another example I can give you. We're using document intelligence, not with AI, but mainly for pulling in timesheets. So one of the things we do is cost analysis on timesheets and submit job sites. So they're scanned in, document intelligence did some adjustment training showing where to look for certain bits. A lot of them are handwritten because they're quite common. Like the set date's going to be the same, or it's going to be within this sort of range. Trained it up. Now we pull all that in, and that's then transferred into a SQL database. Then there's a web front end that then does analysis, and something goes through and checks it all. So now there isn't anybody who's manually pulling that in. It's just all goes in as scanned images. And document and the expensive part of it was the initial training. After that, it's a much less day-to-day cost as we're bringing in new sets of PDFs and processing them and putting them through WebApp.
Okay. Yeah. So your mileage may vary with document intelligence. It may not be like a $700 bill here, because I would imagine with timesheets that's a lot of PDFs. Yeah.
As I say, a lot of them are handwritten, but we're starting to point at other sets of documents like invoices and things that we get in that may take somebody who's doing data entry.
So you mentioned like you're using handwritten stuff. So maybe document intelligence is where the OCR comes in, right? Yeah. So it's using OCR to extract the text. That's probably what you were telling me. I was just too dumb to like listen. And then the text gets sent to LLM for vectorization or something.